Hey, South Baltimore, Nate Carper here, and today we're stepping inside a place that's become a local legend, a spot where dreams come true, and recently, there was a Christmas miracle. We're here at Tiny Brick Oven, right in the heart of Federal Hill, on Light Street. As soon as you walk in, you can smell the goodness, and if these brick walls could talk, they'd tell a story of passion, persistence, and a pizza that changed everything. Today, we're joined by Will Fagg, the heart and soul behind Tiny Brick Oven. This interview is conducted by Kevin Lynch of SouthBmore.com, otherwise known as Pizza Channel Kevin. We're going to hear the incredible journey that brought Will here, and we're going to dive into his culinary roots, the backyard experiments that started it all, and of course, that whirlwind following a certain famous pizza review. So pull up a chair, grab a slice, and let's get started. Welcome to Tiny Brick Oven.
So Will, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, very excited to be here. Thank you, Kevin.
Of course. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the pizza game.
It's a convoluted story, I would say, but my family raised me with Southern food traditions, I would say. And so anytime guests were coming over, we would always have a pretty elaborate meal. So every holiday, anytime guests were coming, we had to prepare a special meal. And so it just, to me, it signified that food and hospitality were really one and the same. And later on, I was an Airbnb host at my house in Old Town Alexandria, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I was a pretty early adopter. I would say in the early days, a lot of Europeans who were used to staying at hostels would come stay there because to them, it didn't seem strange to stay in a stranger's house with them. They thought it was cool. It seemed normal. Like you go to a hostel, you make new friends. That's a normal European thing. So we had a lot of university students on a budget that wanted to see America, wanted to see Washington, D.C. They could stay at a room in my house for about $70 a night. And on top of that, I would sometimes host cookouts in the backyard for them and my neighbors and my friends. We would just do beer, burgers, and dogs and a little bit of music on a beautiful summer, spring night. It was always a good time. And in the early days, Airbnb guests were very grateful for that. They felt like anything free, any party that was thrown for them seemed like a really big treat. And so this established me as a 5-star host, a super host it quickly became Superhost on Airbnb. And that lasted for a couple of years. But later on, Airbnb, the demographic for Airbnb switched from people who were really trying to save money to more affluent guests who thought Airbnb was cool. And so as that switch started to happen, those guests would start to ask, what was I serving in the backyard? And then I'd be like, oh, I've got burgers and dogs. And then you could just tell by the look on their face, they were not excited by that option. And they would say, well, thanks, I've got other plans. We already got dinner plans out in town or whatever. And so that's when I realized that I need to elevate my food game to match the affluence of the Airbnb customers as they were becoming more affluent. And so that stuck in my head for about a year. I was at Home Depot about maybe a year later, maybe a year after that idea was in my head, and there was a propane-powered pizza oven there. And I thought if I was making fresh pizza in the backyard, that would be a lot bigger draw than just very average burgers and dogs. And unfortunately, that oven turned out to not be powerful enough. It didn't get hot enough to make a very good crust. I wanted to cook Neapolitan style, which needs about 900 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't remember the exact temperature that oven got up to, but the burner was really tiny. You could just tell it wasn't going to get hot enough. And so at that time, I ended up building my own oven out of an old Weber grill using real fire bricks and a pizza stone, and then this weed burner that was 150,000 BTUs, crazy, way too powerful. I had to turn it on just a fraction of a hair to get it to be the right heat. And I just started cooking pizza in my backyard with that. And that was the beginning of making pizzas, making artisan pizzas in my backyard. And that's how it all started about 9 years ago now.
Oh, wow. Typical story. Somebody just hand makes a propane pizza oven in their backyard.
I know. I told you it was a convoluted story.
Yeah.
It all seemed logical at the time, but it does sound pretty fantastical. Yeah. I don't know.
And I certainly understand that experience. Me, myself, known as a pizza maker, coming to my house has become an experience. And now literally everybody I see, when are we doing pizza next? When are we doing pizza next? So I can only imagine as an Airbnb host, that would probably be quite the draw once the pizza making got going.
It was very cool. It really did become a more defining element. People were already excited because we're right outside of Washington, D.C. And then I got to introduce them to the idea of Old Town Alexandria, which really wasn't on the world map. But once they were staying there, I was like, you got to go down to King Street. You got to go check out the waterfront. You got to do some other things. And oh, and by the way, we're having dinner tonight. We're making fresh pizza in the backyard. So all of that combined made it, I think, a really a 5-star experience. And pretty around that time, Airbnb opened up something they called Airbnb Experiences. They were trying to find ways to monetize things that weren't just a room to stay in or just a house to stay in. And so one of the things they did is they allowed you to create an experience, and guests, like all Airbnb guests in the area and even non-Airbnb guests, could search the experience database and decide if they wanted to come to it. And so we opened up an Airbnb experience where we taught a miniature pizza class and cooked it on our oven in the backyard. And that became its own thing all on its own, which was incredible.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Now, how much time passed between building that more powerful oven and opening this pizza shop in Federal Hill?
So it was several years. The first year that we were doing pizza just in the backyard, I think it was only just a hobby and really never made any money from it. It was just a lot of fun. That parlayed into us getting invited to go cook at music festivals. And so like I taught my friends a little bit like how to use the oven, and we did some other things, and then we did this kind of like free pizza camp at one music festival. And then the owner of the camp thought that was so cool. He asked if we would vend our pizzas at some of the other events that he hosted at the camp. And I immediately said yes, even though at that point I had no idea how I would possibly fulfill that kind of pizza. I just thought, I'll say yes, and then on the back end, I'll try to figure it out. And if I can't, I'll tell the owner respectfully, hey, we're not able to do it. But I didn't want to say no to a kind of a cool opportunity. And so after that, I met with my friend. He helped me redesign the oven so that it would automatically rotate and be adjustable up and down, which is what I told him we really needed in order for the pizza to be set and forget. And I figured if we had 5 ovens like that, we could handle almost any volume that we would ever need. Since each pizza took 2 minutes to cook, if I had 5 ovens, that meant I could make 5 pizzas every 2 minutes. That would be, what is that, like 300 pizzas an hour in theory, if you could be massively efficient with dough stretching, which it turned out we were never able to stretch the dough fast enough to that ended up being the kind of the bottleneck. You could never stretch fast enough.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure the weather varied too.
Yeah, if it were colder, then it was even harder. All these things. So cooking outdoors, if the weather was nice, if it was a beautiful summer night with a light breeze and it was slightly warm that night, then it felt like the best job in the world. Mm-hmm. Like everyone was in such a great mood. Yeah. But sometimes you would go to these festivals and be raining and cold all weekend. And then everyone was in a terrible mood. Yeah. And so you're just oh, this is we might not lose money at this event, but it's not going to be a great event. And we've been soaked all weekend. So we just want to go home. But it was enough fuel, I think, towards the commercial idea that it made me think we should think about having a brick and mortar, because at all of those events, even the events where it was raining all weekend, people would ask us where our shop was. And I was like, well, we don't have one yet, but you can follow us online and see what event we'll be at next. And I think eventually we will have a brick and mortar. And eventually we settled on this location in Baltimore, and it felt really cool to have a brick and mortar location that we could direct our festival patrons to come to now.
Awesome. Well, we're super glad to have you here in Federal Hill and South Baltimore, and we're really glad that you're still here. Now, I know you were planning to close this shop at the end of last year, and then obviously Dave Portnoy walked in the door and things have changed, but
my gosh.
How dire were things before Dave Portnoy came in and the Christmas miracle that happened?
Yeah, I don't want to say they were really dire. We weren't, I think, in a typical restaurant fashion, we weren't really losing money, but I was working here for a lot of time without getting paid. So if you look at it that way, it wasn't like I was bleeding money, but I was bleeding a lot of my time, and people started calling it my very expensive hobby, which I was kind of it does feel like a pretty expensive hobby. I spend 16 hours a day here and I'm not making any money. That's clearly not a good use of my time. I've got my RN license. I could be making really good money doing that without any of the risk or overhead or outlay of money that you have for running your own business. And there's a massive need for nurses. So maybe I should just go back to nursing until I find maybe a better location where the shop could be more profitable. And I think that was just weighing in the back of my mind for a couple of years. Like, I was just like, at some point, you need to decide if you're not getting paid, you can't just keep doing this forever. We've made our best effort to monetize the shop. It has not been profitable. And I think the location had something to do with it. Certainly, not having a liquor license in this neighborhood is a massive disadvantage, I would say, something that we've struggled with since we opened. And I think it was just a matter of deciding, hey, now's the time to either make the shop profitable or to close it and find a better location. That's where we were at actually 2 years ago. But then the bridge collapsed and the legislative sessions got taken over by the bridge relief bill. And so I felt like, well, hey, now my legislators have a good reason to not be able to help me with legislation for our liquor license here. Let me stay open one more year and see if they'd be willing to help me next year maybe. And that was last year. That was just before Dave Portnoy visited.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know as a business owner, it's like all the good business owners think about paying their employees and paying your bills and getting everything done first. And then at the end of the month, you're like, dang, there's not much left for me.
There's nothing left for me. Yeah, that's true. So we were never not paying our staff. We were never not paying our rent. So it was never, I would say it was never as bad as the death spiral of, now we're not paying anybody. But it was bad enough that I just was personally not getting paid. That felt wrong also.
Yeah. And obviously people hear stories sometimes of business owners that don't do great things, but look around us right here. We're surrounded by probably 200 businesses. Like, how many lawsuits do you know about? Not many. It's most business owners are working hard and they're doing everything they can. And sometimes you go months without writing yourself a good paycheck, but we're thankful for people like you and everyone who creates these vibrant retail districts that there's a lot of sacrifices that go into business ownership, and it takes a tough person for sure.
I think that's right. I think all the small business owners in this neighborhood and maybe in all of Baltimore are struggling in some ways with the same things that affected us. It's not just Tiny Brick Oven alone. It's really a community of business owners that have seen maybe some slowdown in tourism and some things like that. We'd love to see more people come back to the city. We'd love to see more tourism return. And we'd love to see people come down and enjoy Federal Hill for the beautiful, vibrant neighborhood that it is.
And people tell me to get into why don't you open a pizza shop? I hear that once a week. And
you are a pizza guy. You are
I'm a pizza guy.
You are a pizza guy. You're a pretty known pizza guy.
But there's many reasons why I don't want to do that at this time. But one of the things I always say is just as a restaurant owner, there's so many things out of your control. You can't control the weather. You can't control whether the Orioles or the Ravens are good. You can't control the economy. You can't control inflation. You can't control if crime is rising. You can't control if there's political unrest happening.
Are you telling me if I wear my jersey and my hat, the Orioles aren't going to do better? Because I feel like I have a little control, Kevin. I'm just wondering.
Shirt. I do have a lucky shirt, so maybe I'll bring it to you.
I'm wearing my lucky shirt, just so you know.
But think about, in recent years, the Orioles' attendance has gone from averaging like 18,000 a year, which I think they were over 30 last year. If you can get that up to 35, that's like literally 20,000 extra people a night in South Baltimore and the Inner Harbor.
That is incredible.
That could make or break somebody's business. And
we're so excited for opening day.
Yeah, always a good time in Baltimore, and I love the Orioles, but I know that the more people that are in the stands, the better the local economy is going to be.
That's legit.
It's also something I root for. Now, when I like to say Dave Portnoy walking into a pizza shop is probably like Taylor Swift walking into a high school classroom. It's probably like, for a pizza owner, it's probably just a moment where you're like, no effing way.
I think you can tell by the look on my face. I was shocked out of my mind. Like, it was so surreal. I think the two girls in the window really summed up the excitement the best. They were like screaming and crying, all this stuff. And it was so strange because they had actually come in that night to have our pizza and gelato before we closed, before they went on Christmas break. So they were like, oh, this is the last night we're going to be in town before we go on Christmas vacation and before you close. So we wanted to come in tonight to celebrate the deliciousness of your pizza, the deliciousness of your gelato. Get that one last time. It was almost like a last supper. And then they were the first ones that saw him walking down the sidewalk with his camera guy. And so they started freaking out before he even came in the shop. I didn't know what they were reacting to, but I was looking at them, and then suddenly he walked through the door. So it was like an oh damn moment. I was like, holy crap. 4 years ago we tagged him, we put his name on the wall. We were hoping he would come 4 years ago. And then for him to show up just like 12 days before we were supposed to close, it really felt pretty miraculous.
You're like, this is why we mix dough at midnight. This moment right here.
Exactly. This is why we made it to one more day, one more year.
Yeah, this is why we did an extra day on the ferment.
That's it. For this moment, 100%. 100%.
And he came in, and a lot of things happened, and millions of people saw at least the edited version of a video, which included him loving the pizza. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I always knew he would like the pizza. I feel like I am one of the biggest pizza nerds in Baltimore for sure.
But I think he came in here and he loved you. And he loved what he got a feel for Baltimore and South Baltimore while he was in here. So
I think that's right.
And then I love how I wrote a story on southbeamore.com about the interaction, but I also said that you aggressively promoted Baltimore while he was here.
I do my best to be an ambassador. I think that's true of every shop owner. Anytime anyone sets foot into any shop in Baltimore, or any city for that matter, you get to be an ambassador for that city. If you are, whatever experience you create for that customer is going to be part of their blueprint of your city. So I always try to provide my guests a great experience, and I hope that becomes part of their Baltimore memory versus something they might see on the national media where Baltimore isn't always reflected in the best light. And I did watch several of other Dave's videos, and I felt like he did have kind of a quirky, cool, fun visit to Baltimore, which is something I think the city really represents.
Yeah, I loved looking at the comments too, where just obviously Dave went to the last review in Baltimore. He's like, these Baltimore videos have been something. You could just tell he was having a good time. And the commenters were just these Baltimore videos are fire.
They are very cool.
There's cool people, there's characters, Dave's having a blast. There's ladies yelling at him from basements. There's the fun old lady at Angeli's in Little Italy, and it's
Mariana.
Mariana.
I fell in love with Mariana. That was so cool.
Yeah, so I just loved the attention it brought to Baltimore, and I obviously love that we're still in Tiny Brick Oven talking to you.
Yes,
and
thank you.
So he came in and he decided, I need to do something to prevent you from closing. So talk about him coming back in here and wanting to make a contribution to your business and what that was like.
Yeah, that was so wild. I thought he was just going to come back in and tell me the score. That's what I was... When I came out to meet him, I was thinking now he's going to tell me the score. I'd like to know what the score is. Although, honestly, I feel like the interview went so well and everything else, the score is almost irrelevant in a way. He was so nice to us. He was like, how much money do you need to stay open for another year? I was already shocked that he was here. I was so pleasantly surprised that he was in Baltimore at all. It was really an honor to be able to greet him and to get him to try my pizza. I thought that was incredible. And then for him to offer me money, I was really surprised and humbled. I didn't know what to say. I didn't really want a handout in any way, and I wasn't sure what to say, but he did seem very insistent on getting a number. And so I felt like it would be rude almost in a way to not do it at that point. I tried once to be like, I don't know. And then he was like, yeah, but if some super rich guy's in front of you and you have to give him a number or he's going to walk away, you got to say something. So then that's when, I guess it was 4 years ago, there was a liquor license for sale for $30,000. We figured we need another $30,000 for inventory and equipment and some things like that. And so we were going to try to raise $60,000. That deal on that license fell through. We were never able to secure a deal on that license, so we never raised the money. But that's why that number just stuck in my head. And so when he asked, how much do you need? I said 60,000. And then basically no hesitation, he was done. And on a handshake, I was just completely shocked. I think even his eyes widened a little bit. It was really an insane moment, man. I never imagined anything like that could happen to us here. So
yeah, unbelievable.
Some people are saying it was a $60,000 tip. I remember as a kid when I was cocktailing, I got a $100 tip from this table that bought 6 bottles of champagne. I thought that was probably the highest tip I was ever going to get.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone will ever top the $60,000 tip. I have a funny feeling that's going to remain the lifelong biggest tip ever.
Maybe there's a chance, but
maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance.
Yeah. So obviously, I guess there was probably 2 weeks between him coming in and the review dropping, would you say?
That's right. That's right. And two weeks of me having to figure out then how we would deal with a massive amount more of traffic. I think people know pretty well about the Portnoy effect, that you're going to be sold out for probably several weeks after that review drops.
Was there any sort of NDA? Don't talk about the score until it airs or anything? Or does he just walk away? Or is there any...
There was no legal binding agreement, but he did ask me to keep it under wraps until the video dropped. And I felt like it would be disrespectful to go against that. I mean, it doesn't... Here's this guy... He's giving you a massive gift just by visiting your shop.
Sure.
He's given us another massive gift by donating $60,000. And his only request is that we just not talk about it until the video drops. So I felt like the least I could do is be respectful of that request.
Sure.
It did make it a little bit difficult for a lot of my regulars who were like, are you going to be able to stay in business? Are you going to be able to stay in business?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I think we're going to be able to stay in business. And then they're like, you could tell they want to know like why. And I was just like, I think you'll see very soon.
Yeah. There were some hints of optimism, I could tell.
Good things have happened. I think we're going to be fine.
And I think the review dropped on December 23rd, I believe was the day.
That's right.
I'm at a Christmas party and my phone is just blowing up. Probably to 1/10 of the degree that your phone was blowing up.
Oh my gosh, it went completely bananas.
And literally I'm at a party with other people that love pizza and love Dave's reviews, and we all had to sneak into a quiet corner and watch the video. And and then obviously talk about a viral moment. So many big Twitter users, and I think it got picked up by the New York Post and CNN and like all these
it was wild.
Big publications. So really cool. So after the review dropped, and did he give you a heads up of when it was going to drop, or was it a surprise?
It's funny that you say that. He had said it would drop before Christmas, since we had said we were going to close before Christmas. But in my mind, I'm thinking like he's part of a big multimedia machine. Just because he said that doesn't mean it can necessarily happen.
Yeah.
And on the 22nd, I'm back here like working on, we got a new oven that does New York style, and I'm working with that oven trying to figure out like how big to make our dough balls and some other changes that needed to be made. And so I just thought like at that point, it was so close to Christmas, maybe even though he told us that it would, maybe it wasn't possible. Like maybe it had to wait till after Christmas. And I didn't mind that at all. And I completely understood, like, Dave is part of a huge machine. It's not just because he said one thing doesn't necessarily mean it's 100% going to happen. And at that point, we were proceeding thinking maybe it won't drop before Christmas. But true to his word, it did drop just 2 days before Christmas. And the timing was pretty ironic, I would say. Like, it really felt like a Christmas miracle.
So I guess the first day to impact business would be Christmas Eve.
Oh my gosh.
That's always an interesting day for any restaurant business, I would think. But that's probably an interesting day to be all of a sudden the talk of town when it comes to pizza.
Normally a very slow day for us. I mean, you figure most people are not going to have pizza for their Christmas dinner or their pre-Christmas meal. And then we just had this line out the door, man. It was completely nuts. And media were here. We were so swarmed that day. I presume I could have been also very busy on Christmas Day, but I didn't feel like it was right to make employees work on Christmas Day. And we needed a break anyways.
Yeah.
So I just decided the shop would not be open on Christmas Day, and we'd try to be more ready for a very busy day the day after Christmas. And it was insanely busy for several weeks.
Having a media business myself, I think you know when you're producing a piece of content and it's going to be good. And obviously they knew this video was going to be popular.
They somehow knew.
And they dropped your video on the 23rd of December. Didn't drop another video for the end of the year because I think they thought people want to feel good around Christmas. This will make people feel good. This is a good way to put a bow tie on 2024, and then we'll get back to 2025. And it was exciting when 2025 hit because then it was just this onslaught of more Baltimore videos, which was cool. But I think they knew to let your video marinate right before Christmas and through the end of the year and let people feel good about that. And obviously, I'm sure your accounting for the year 2024 had quite the ninth inning after that. So tell us about how busy were you in those days and weeks after the review dropped?
Yeah, it's so wild. I figured our little shop here with its tiny footprint is maybe set up to easily handle about 70 guests per day. And we'd be pretty profitable at about 70 guests per day, 5 days a week, 5 or 6 days a week. And I want to say after that review dropped, there were times when we would sell out of dough twice a day. We couldn't make dough fast enough. I had to buy like a dough baller machine, which we have now, which really helps. But every night we were making dough balls by hand. My hands were getting sore every night. We were serving over 200 guests a day. And we had to limit. Like we had people coming in wanting to order 20 pizzas. And I had explained to them like, we could not fulfill an order of 20 pizzas right now. We were limiting guests at that time to 2 pizzas per order. Part of that was because we could not answer the phone. We turned off online ordering. The phone was ringing nonstop this whole time, like the phone just be ringing, people from all over the world, some calling to just congratulate us, some calling to wish us well, some saying that they felt we deserved all the support and love and that they were really moved by our story. A lot of people told us that the video made them cry. So it was a massive outpouring of support. Just the night the video dropped and when I was back in the kitchen working with the ovens, the register started going crazy with the amount of people donating pizzas to our Pay It Forward program. And like thousands of orders in the next 3 days would print out just saying pizza donation. Pizza donation times 1, pizza donation times 5, pizza donation times 10, pizza donation times 50 sometimes. And so I want to say we collected about $12,000 in donations in the first 3 days. It was so wild. Just the donation volume alone was more than our normal sales volume by far. And people who just wanted to buy a slice of pizza for a complete stranger. It felt pretty miraculous, felt pretty nice.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that to me, pizza equals happiness. So
I agree with that.
I think you can donate a lot of things to a lot of people, but I think giving somebody a slice of pizza is probably pretty close to guaranteeing a smile, I would think.
100%. We've had certainly a lot of gratitude for that program, and maybe one of the coolest things we've ever done by far. Something we did way before Dave Portnoy ever came, and something that was certainly supported by the neighbors before Dave Portnoy ever came. I feel like that vehicle for generosity is something that Baltimore embraced from the very beginning.
That's why we love this town.
It's a great town.
I just think about the amount of volunteering it takes to have South Baltimore function between the churches and the schools and the sports leagues and the neighborhood. We have too many neighborhood associations. And so all the amount of volunteering it takes to have a functional society is really plays out in a neighborhood like this. And that's so great to see people looking out for others. And I know, too, that obviously you saw more people wanted to be part of the Pay It Forward program. You launched your GoFundMe, and that was super successful. So talk about sort of the success of that and just how that felt.
Yeah, that was so wild. I think we originally set our GoFundMe goal. So someone had said early on, they were like, oh, like with this Dave review, you need to do the GoFundMe. And so we did that just because they were like, this is the thing to do once you get a Portnoy review. So I thought maybe we can raise $5,000. In the first few hours, we had gone way past 5,000. So I was like, okay, I think we're at like 6,000. So I was like, okay, let me see if we can get 10,000. I raised the amount a little bit to 10,000. And by the end of, I think the second day, we had exceeded that. At that point, we had so much money for the Pay It Forward. I thought, what else could we do that would really help our business and help us give back more? And then I thought, maybe this thing seems to be so viral. Maybe we could use that money to buy our next location instead of having a mortgage. And then we'd be in a much better position to be more generous with our neighbors and the organizations around here that could use donations. And so we raised it up thinking maybe that would be the limit. And we never quite got to that amount, but it did go up to 130,000, I think. And we had several CEOs donate to it. We had a hedge fund manager, Bill Ackman in New York, who donated.
Wow.
We got tweeted about like all over the Twitterverse, apparently, with people tweeting the governor, asking him to help us. I would love it if the governor and the mayor would show up, by the way. Like we want to definitely send that invite out. We would love for them to come by and have a slice. Anyone in Baltimore.
You won't regret it.
Yeah. Anyone in Baltimore who loves this city, we'd love for you to drop by and have a slice, 100%.
I know you've said you want a liquor license and you're here right now. What is the status of things right now? Are you actively looking for another location? Are you actively looking for a liquor license? Anything developing at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. I think the path to get a liquor license is not a straight path. It's hard to know if we will have to change location or if a license will become available. We're trying to leave all options open for that because I do think for the long-term sustainability of this business, it would really be helpful if customers could have wine and beer with their pizza. It would be a game changer for us for sure.
I wore a shirt in one of my recent videos that just said, "Life is good," and it had a picture of a beer and a slice of pizza.
They really go together.
Yeah,
like,
they do.
It's a classic pairing. We still have some beverages, just non-alcoholic beverages. We are BYOB for now, but it would be so nice if people could come in and buy a pizza and a beer. I think that would really be a winning combination.
And obviously you had that surge after the review dropped. Has business been steady and consistent and bigger than before in the past few weeks?
It has been. It definitely trailed off from, I would say, an unsustainable amount of customers. And at that point, we had to limit to just cheese and pepperoni. We've opened our menu back up a little bit, and we've made more menu items available, but we are still so busy, we have not been able to offer delivery yet. So I think we're trying to staff up, get some good kitchen help, and then reopen delivery again as well.
Very cool. Be patient, people.
Yeah, please be patient. We love you all so much. We're doing our best to serve you under these circumstances. We really appreciate you.
And before we leave, we love South Baltimore, and I know you're not originally from here, but you've really made it your home. You're more than just a pizza shop. I know you've been really dedicated to making sure people out there that are hungry can get meals. You've done your soup kitchens. You obviously have your Pay It Forward pizza program. I know you've done different initiatives like building hand washing sinks, which was essential post-COVID. I know you're a man of a million ideas. So why is it important to you to not just be a business owner, but to really take stake in the neighborhood where your brick and mortar exists?
I've always felt that way. A lot of people ask me if I'm the owner of this pizza shop, and I always like to tell them that I believe this shop is owned by the community. And I think every small business really needs that love and support from the community that they're in. It's not just about making money, it's about aligning with the neighbors that you have. And I've always wanted to be a good neighbor. I've always done my best to be a good neighbor. And when I came here, I felt like I was really welcomed with open arms by a lot of the neighbors here. And I've always believed that if you're going to be successful, it's going to be because of the neighborhood that you're in. And we found a lot of success. Even though we weren't making any money, we still had a lot of support for all of those initiatives. We still got a lot of donations, really thousands of donations before Dave Portnoy ever showed up to our Pay It Forward program from the neighbors here. That really felt like a lot of love and support, that it did help sustain our business through the very dark pandemic times, and something that we've always really appreciated. So yeah, I would say South Baltimore is more my home than any other neighborhood for sure, because we made it through the pandemic together, and we couldn't have done that without the love and generosity and support of this neighborhood.
Awesome. I think about that with my business, southbeemore.com too. It's like sometimes there's tough months, but it's like, I wouldn't even know how to walk away from this thing. People would be real mad about it. No, you don't.
Such a fabric. You're such a part of the fabric here.
Yeah.
We don't know what we would do without you, man.
Yeah, very cool. And sorry, one more last question. When you're not making pizza for yourself and you want to eat some pizza elsewhere in the city, in the country, in the world, what are you seeking out? What kind of slice, what kind of technique is really what you're trying to eye if you want to get a slice of pizza and you didn't make it yourself?
I really like to try all different kinds, because I think there's always innovations. At some point, although I'm not a big fan of Hawaiian, I know a lot of people love Hawaiian. At some point, that was a new innovation, and one tried that combination, and people loved it.
So I can say real quick, my favorite thing about the Hawaiian, it's named after an American state. It was invented by a Greek guy in Canada, and it's an Italian food. So
it is wild.
And if you had jalapenos to it, you could give it a Mexican twist.
That's it. We want to know when Hawaiians are going to invent some Canadian pizza. I don't know. But so I think trying new things is fun. But if I'm really going for maybe my favorite classic style, I love to go to New York and get a New York slice.
Of course, yeah.
I think Frank's in Baltimore is also really good. They're way on the other side of town, and I think if you're on that side of town, you should go to Frank's, and if you're on this side of town, we hope you'll come to Tiny Brick Oven. But everyone's got their own personal favorites, and I think there's room for great pizza all over the place. So I hope more people are inspired to make great food, and I think they'll always find their audience if they do that.
Absolutely. I think customers can see when an owner's got passion and when an owner's got pride, and when they go that extra mile to make the customer happy and to make the food good. And I think we're obviously seeing that here. So congratulations on us still sitting here with these cool red checkered tablecloths and in Tiny Brick. And maybe we'll be in a bigger location soon and we can get your pizzas delivered again and maybe have a nice Peroni with it or something. But congratulations on your continued success. And thanks for joining the podcast. And let's get those pizza ovens turned on.
Thanks, Kevin. We appreciate you so much, man.
Right.